This is a quick little video about how to cast off when you're doing a tube scarf with this loom. I know I have a little video up about how to cast on it, and I talked a little bit about tube scarves. That was done a while ago when I first started getting into this, so I thought it'd be good to update. So I'm going to show you how to cast this off, and then I can show you turn around and how to cast it on. I know it's backwards, but the idea for the video hit me after I did my tube scarf. As you can see, I got a really funky kind of tube scarf going on here. It actually, if you see the pattern, it did that on its own. It just happened to be the way. I'm using two strands at once. I've got this regular like red heart black, and then I got this fuzzy one. The fuzzy one came from the dollar store. And this is how it kind of looks like on the little, this is what I have left. And as you can tell, I mean it was only probably a little bigger than this really. It wasn't a big skein of yarn. So you don't really need a lot of yarn to make a tube scarf. Well, I've got this down to where I think I want my length to be. I can't tell you how long it is. It's different for everybody. The best way to see if it's the length you want is just put it around your neck and go from there. And because everybody, taller people are going to need it longer, short people like me, shorter. So you're getting ready to cast it off. And what I do it a certain way that might be different than the way they teach you. I believe I do it the way they showed in the instructions, but maybe not. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this because I don't need this on there anymore, so I just cut that. Then I turn around, and this is where you can decide, are you going to want to just use one strand to bind it off, or two? At this point, because I'm using the black, I'm just going to stick with, stick with this one. I'm not going to worry about using this one too. So I'm going to take this aside, wrap it back into its little ball, and there's enough left over that I can probably do some little project, or it's going to go in my scrap yarn. So then we cut off. You do not need that long for this because you're just taking the loops off. But for safety, you can do like 12 inches or so. You won't really need all that, but I always say it's better to have more than enough. So you got your strand. Get one of your little needles that comes with the kit. Thread that. If you need to, I sometimes use a needle threader. But usually, this brand will slip through, okay. And it's just almost like you're casting off on your hat. If you remember the video with casting off on the hat, it's the same idea. You got the strands here, hold them all together, and then work your way under the loop, and then pull out the loop. So it's all you gotta do, working your way around. See, you're going in through there, pulling it up, and then taking that loop off. Going in through there. And like I said, this is pretty easy. This is a technique that I do. I'm going all the way around. Like I said, there's not that many pegs, so it should not take you that long once you get going at it. Just keep an eye that it doesn't like tangle around the other pegs. And you don't have to worry about tugging it, because all you're going to do is just bring it up through, take it off the peg. Put the needle up through, take it off the peg. We're on our last one. Again, I got some tangling going on here, so just kind of fix that over. Okay. Likes to do that sometimes. Alright, last loop is off. Just pull it out through the bottom if you're able to. Got caught here, so we're just going to let it pull through. You're done with the needle, so take that off the yarn. And then just kind of pull it tight and tie off your loose strands, which for some reason I've got more than I should. Okay, so you should have two from when you started and the one you have there, and for me I just tie them off. It's a little tricky with the fuzzier yarn, so let me do this again. So you're just going to tie it off. I mean, most of the time you can use one strand, but sometimes when I do the fuzzier yarn I like to mix the other yarn in with it. So that's all tied off. Just trim it. If you don't want that little tail that's kind of on there, just use your crochet hook and kind of hide it inside there if you want. Now on the other side of this is you're working the yarn that you originally started with, the yarn that you dropped down through the loom to start it. Now you have two options here. You can get another needle and thread it with the yarn and sew it up, or you got this strand here. That's why I always leave a lot when you're starting so that you can always use this to close this off. So don't make it really short. Give yourself, you know, almost 12 inches, or this is probably more like 8 to 9, to play with in the end, because then all you have to do, using your crochet hook, is go through the project and grab that. It's going to be a little tricky because this yarn is fluffier. So it's going to be, that's why if you're using two different types of yarn, okay, that's really not cooperating. That's all I usually do, is I just use a crochet hook and I go through the project and grab it. There we go. And that helps close it off. It's not as flat, or it's not as, round as the other side is. The other side is a little more round. But you really can't notice it when it's on you, whether or not it's flat around. I mean, lost my other side here. So there's a little difference in them, but you can kind of flatten that down anyway. So that's all you're going to do, is you're just closing it off by taking your crochet hook through, grabbing, oops, my fingers are in the way, grabbing the yarn that's there, and pulling it back through, if it cooperates. You want to make sure you don't find out that it's actually going to stay secure. But that's all I do. And like I said, but if you have two strands like this and they're fighting you, then just thread another needle and sew it off. I mean, like you would normally will say sew something. But I try to use the strands if I'm able to. And using the same color if you can, makes it so that people won't notice. So when you get down here, you're like, okay, well, what are you going to do? If I cut this off right now, it's going to unthread. So sometimes what I do is I do another loop, but I keep my finger there. So it's kind of like a little buffer. So see, my finger's there as a little buffer, so that I'll have that loop to kind of work with. If this would just cooperate. Yeah, this yarn is not the best yarn to try to thread through each other. Okay, so sometimes you can just pull it through. It didn't come through the other one. Oh, it's gonna fight me. Well, if you have two strands, you can have one on one side and one on the other, and you can just tie it off too. That's sometimes what I do also. If I have two strands, pull one through so one of the strand is on one side and one's on the other, and then you can tie it off as well. But it's whatever way works for you. I mean, this just happened to be an accident that works. One came through, the other's on the other side, so we're just going to tie that. It's going to make it snug. Then you just snip that off. And then you can just kind of reach around and hide those in. Okay, and there's your tube scarf. I'll cast it off. There we go. And just to start the project, I'm only going to show with the black yarn right now. When you want to start it, you're just dropping it either side, whether you're making a handle or a scarf, you're just going to drop it down in. Like I said, a few inches, so you have that to play with to close it off at the end. And then you're just going to like E-wrap your pegs around. So you're just E-wrapping them around like you would normally do anyway. Do one surround. And these pegs are big enough to do other stitches. You don't have to just do, you know, 2 rows like this. Okay, you wrap it around again. Kind of hold it in place. And then you would do the knitting over. These are tall enough that you can even do a tighter stitch one, or even the chunky braid stitch. So you can do where you're doing 1/2 to make the tighter stitch, or you can do a 3/4 if your yarn is thin enough, and you'll have like a chunky braid stitch. So that's just how you start the project and end the project, but in opposite order. So have a good night, everyone. Bye.